Hello, boys and girls of YouTube. Alright, we are at day 78. And yeah, a few things crossed off the list, making a little bit of progress. But if you watched my last video or the one before, I was hoping to have this all running by day 80. And clearly, well, maybe not clearly to you, but clearly to me, not clearly to you, it didn't happen. So, definitely made some progress. A lot of the list is checked off. Not a lot of big things really need to be checked off. Just life got in the way. But here's where we are. Alright. So, I just got to double check the fuel lines, but they're basically all on. I just got to run through and make sure they're all tight, make sure I didn't miss anything. So that's why that's really not crossed off the list, if you happen to notice that. But I did wire in the solenoids for the NOS. Just got to get some wire covering to hide all that nastiness. Just, I hate wires hanging out. They just don't look clean. Not that the rest of the stuff isn't a mess, but I just can't stand wires hanging all out. Anyway, still have to change the oil filter, clean the valve covers, put the valve covers on, bolt them down, run the spark plug pliers. I did fill up the radiator with water. For this car, during the winter I drain it so it doesn't freeze. I don't put any antifreeze on it because if at the track when you race, they really don't like anybody using antifreeze, because if you do have a problem when racing, and that's one thing that really takes forever to clean up, is antifreeze. Oil's another big one, but antifreeze is bad, so I definitely run water. Like I said, in the winter I drain it so it doesn't freeze or anything, but very rarely does it get that cold where I'm at, but it is possible, so I drain that. I did hook up something, if you didn't notice, this big green filter in the back. The catch can, it had a very small filter that came with it, or breather, whatever you want to call. And here it is. It's kind of small, so I definitely had to put a bigger one on. The hole is a decent size, so I think filter will help support the opening for the breathers, in the valve cover to evacuate the crankcase pressure. The cage can itself is kind of small. I was trying to really find a little bit bigger filter than I showed you, but smaller than that, and wasn't really trying to look for green. Was just looking for something black. What I'm really probably going to do, and no offense to somebody that makes that product, I'm probably going to change it to blue, and probably the air filter, I'll probably change that too. And again, that's if I am all done with everything else, and that's the last thing I want to do, is just make everything match. The goal definitely is not to make this thing look pretty. It's to make it function right, and get everything in place that's supposed to be. But really not a lot left to do. So I really do believe in the next 2 days I'll get this thing at least started. Now, again, if you go back to my other videos, you'll see what problems I've had in the past with this motor. But save you some time, unless you really want to go look, because there's some good footage of it well, maybe not good footage, but footage of it running. Then showing you some of the problems that I had. One big one was an oil leak. I believe it was leaking from the back of the manifold. Um, the other was a vacuum leak, and I do believe that was coming from underneath the manifold. And then the final issue I had, although I did solve that one, the last time I had this up and running was the signal for RPM had a lot of noise in it. So I reran that, and that seems to solve that problem. And it's the signal is actually very clear now. So the ECU is not jumping all around and making this thing go haywire. But I still have a problem with because I believe because of the vacuum leak of the motor, like as soon as it starts, it goes like to 4 grand. So I'm hoping that it was actually a little bit of a vacuum leak underneath the manifold, because I use thinner gaskets than I normally do. I found out with the last blower, it was an old B&M, that this configuration with this block and cylinder heads, I guess it's definitely off a little bit, and I measure everything. It looked like it was right on, but when I put the B&M manifold on, it definitely had a gap and did not seal well at all. Usually that occurs when either the heads are decked a lot or the motor's decked a lot, and the spacings and tolerances get a little out of whack. But maybe that's what happened with this new setup, because everything was brand new. Nothing was surfaced more than it should. At least I don't think it was. Like I said, I took some measurements. Again, it doesn't take a lot to be off, but long story short, I use the thicker Velcro gaskets now between the block, the cylinder head, and the manifold, and that should do it. That seemed to have done the trick with the old blower. I used that when I put this new blower on. I didn't have that kind of a problem, but it was carbureted at that point. But definitely did not see that problem. The problem definitely did seem to be when I changed to the thinner gaskets. But when I changed to the thinner gaskets, I actually put the fuel injection on as well. So I'm hoping that's what it was. We'll find out soon enough. But yeah, we're definitely making progress. It's very, very close. Hopefully, the next update you will see this thing running. Hopefully, it'll be running with all the issues I had solved. Because if that's the case, then we just need to get some kind of tune this to drive it around to make sure the transmission works, because it's a 4L80E that I rebuilt. It's the first time I attempted to rebuild a transmission. Now, hopefully, if I get it started and get it running, if there's a problem, I have enough time to actually take it somewhere and get somebody else to rip it back apart and put it together. Now, the bad thing is, I followed some of the recommended tweaks for when you're racing these transmissions, and I'm not sure how many local guys can actually understand what was done. Basically, I added I added a clutch. Let's see what else. A couple of circuits open up a little bigger. Put a different plate in. Basically call it a shift kit, but not really. Also, though, it's a manual valve body, but it's still the stock one. I just used the pressure switches and rewired it so that when you put it in gear, it actually triggers the pressure switch, which triggers the correct solenoid. So that pressure switch is actually meant to be connected to the stock ECU to tell that what gear it's in. So I'm not using an ECU for the transmission at all, so it's just total manual. So when you'll shift in gear, it'll turn the right pressure switch on, which, like I said, activates the solenoid, which puts it in gear. It's a very common way to do it. Um, like Jake's Performance sells, some wiring basically to do that. But you can actually get a manual valve body, which a couple companies make. I know TCI makes one of a couple other companies out there. I just can't remember off the top of my head. But worst comes to worst, I'll get a real manual valve body if this doesn't work out well, and throw that in. Just those also have trans brakes, and I didn't. Don't mind the trans brake, but the class I run in, you're not allowed to use them. You can foot brake, but you can't use a trans brake. And I don't want to be, called out as cheating in any way, shape, or form. So, I didn't want to put that in there. Just avoid that headache. Not that I would be, if I'm ever in contention, it'd be a miracle. But if I ever was, I didn't want that to be something, any controversy. I mean, long story short, it's a manual for that I put together, and hopefully it works. Bottom line, boom, done. All right, so that's the current update. I know I'm rambling once again, but anybody sticks to the end, I really do appreciate it, and I'll be like everybody else. What is it? Subscribe, like, comment. Yeah, I think that's what everybody says. Long story short, I'm not a YouTube guy. I don't plan to be. If this takes off, who knows? I doubt I'll ever do anything. But again, it's really, for me to get motivated to get this thing done, because it really is actually a good motivator, because I felt really bad that I didn't give an update on I'm going to call it my channel, for the few people that are actually, subscribed. And I really do appreciate that. I mean, I'm glad people are interested. Been doing this for a long time, and been failing at a long time, since 2014 technically. I've only had one successful year with this car. Every other time it's broken or not made it to the event. When it's broken day one. But at least I've gotten to the event with the vehicle, because usually I'll drive it. I don't trailer it to the, it's supposed to be a street car, so I definitely drive it to the event. Depends where it is, but this year I think I've got a 10-hour drive just to get there, give or take. So that's usually if it can make that run, usually it makes it. But the third time I tried with the car, on the way, the blower blew up. That was the B&M I mentioned before. And I made it to the event. Actually did day one with the blower messed up. I actually just had it blower as a fixed position, this way to let air through it, because it got all messed up inside. And ran the event. I forget what the time was, like 18 seconds or whatever. But then drove to Jegs and was going to try to buy a wine, but I got to the store with thinking they had one there or would have one there. It was like their bigger store, but they only had them in the warehouse, and the warehouse was like closing in like 10 minutes after I got there, and they wouldn't keep it open. So long story short, I bailed out on that one. I could have probably just matter of fact, they did buy just a regular stock manifold, but when I started taking everything apart, I noticed, how bad the blower was, and I really didn't want to drive that car anymore with, knowing how chewed up the blower was inside. And so I came back home that year and just took everything apart and put everything back together, make sure it was all cleaned up and ready to go. And following year was fine, but following year, that's when the transmission blew, which revved this thing sky high, which actually then lifted a head gasket. So, yeah, I could have had a transmission built. They actually, one other guy did it that year. He was there just as late as I was, trying to get his transmission done. But it was twofold. Really, I'd have to get the transmission done, and then would have had, I didn't know what kind of shape the head was or the block was because it lifted, and I didn't know at that point in time everything was fine. I just had to have the heads resurfaced just to make sure it was flat, and they were actually good. It just lifted the head, lifted the gasket, and if I had a set of gaskets, I probably could have put them on, and if the transmission wasn't blown, would have continued. But I didn't, so again I quit. So that was 2017. Yeah, that was the last time this car actually made it to drag week. And 2018, it didn't make it again. All right, now this is the history of my drag week experience. 2018, I went there knowing this thing didn't make it because the oil leak at that point, actually, with the fuel injection on, and I think it was revving heck. But long story short, I met a really good guy there, and I just met him there, and I asked him if he had anybody to be a co-pilot, and he didn't. So I told him I had hotel rooms already booked because he didn't. And he's like, come on, jump in. And he asked me if I knew how to run a camera. It's like, well, I can learn. That's what started me really down my YouTube path, though, because he wanted to put everything on in YouTube. He didn't, but long story, maybe because I didn't do a great job videotaping. As you can see, this is not my forte, but ran the week with him. It was great. We still keep in touch. Hopefully he'll make it to the next drag week. We'll hook up again. This time he'll follow me or I'll follow him. He's got a really cool S10 he's working on. I won't give any details about that, but it's really cool. In 2019, if you look at some of my videos from 2019, yeah, I took my daily driver because, again, I still didn't get this thing fixed. I had everything apart, put it all back together, and that's when I actually fixed the RPM problem, but still had the oil leak and still had this thing where it was revving to the moon, and I couldn't figure it out and ran out of time. I ripped the motor apart like twice and put it back together. And again, I finally realized I was using the thicker gaskets on this motor too. Well, this combination with this blower and block, and now I've done that. So, all right, I've rambled enough. That was supposed to be a quick update, but long story short, if you stayed at the end, hey, really appreciate it. Thanks, and hopefully you'll see this thing up and running soon. And thanks for your patience, and see you next time.